Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of What Do You Know with Joe. I have Jay Bergantim joining me and my brother Anthony Cafiero, both very knowledgeable about the beer industry, and they're going to tell us a little bit more about it. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of
Appreciate
course.
it.
Before we jump into the questions, actually, because we kind of talked this before, can I ask what beer you're both drinking right now?
Anthony goes first.
Okay. Joe, you might know this one from Uncle Matt, but I'm having a Barn Rocker session.
Right on.
Yeah, go Islanders. So yeah, Oyster Bay Brewing. Really one of the only beers that I've had from them, but very, very tasty. And
Can you tell me what kind of beer it is? Like, do you know?
It's a session ale. So 4.5%. Yeah, and to Jay was asking a little bit before this too. It is not a session IPA, but yeah, there is a difference, but yeah. So
Okay, all right,
yeah.
swinging it over to you, Jay. What do you got?
I'm drinking Old Busthead's Kolsch. Our Kolsch.
Ooh,
yeah,
that's a good one.
Yeah.
I've had that one. That's a good one. Love a good Kolsch too, and
Me
Old
too,
Busted
man.
is a good one. Well, that's great to hear. So, as we both know, you both are. Well, I know, but can't wait for everyone to know. You both are in the beer making process. What are your current roles, and maybe what is something about your brewery, like something about the brewery, like industry, or maybe something like with your role people may not know. And we'll start with you, Jay. We'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. So I am, excuse me, I'm the brewmaster at Old Busthead. It's kind of a silly title, I know, but it's my title nonetheless. So, so basically, yeah, so that's my role. I kind of just manage production. Anthony does all the brewing. I do all the kind of, forecasting, logistics, all that stuff. And something interesting about Old Busthead is we're the largest solar brewery in Virginia, and we're also the first in Virginia to be utilizing CO2 recapture technology. So basically, every fermentation that every beer that we ferment, we capture and reuse the CO2. So we're the first in Virginia to do that. So
that's really cool.
not many people do that.
Yeah, no, I think that's something very knowledgeable, and also way to be recycling, Old Busthead. What is solar? Like what does it mean to be a solar brewery? Like what does that mean?
Yeah, so we have the largest like solar farm, largest brewery with the largest solar farm basically, and so that so 50% of our energy comes from the solar panels on our roof.
That's really cool. So wow. Not only are you recycling the CO2, you guys are a very not only efficient brewery, but a very environmentally friendly brewery. I respect that.
Yeah,
Everyone,
absolutely.
That's what's up. Awesome. Ant, turn it over to you.
Yeah. So I am the cellar manager at Old Busthead. Basically, mainly run the day-to-day operations that Jay passes along to me. So along with brewing, I mainly is responsible for the cold side of beer. So anything that's happening during fermentation, taking gravities, making sure that the beer is doing exactly what it needs to do, and then relaying that information onto Jay along with our QA QC person, Erica Davison. So yeah, so we work together very well. We do have a couple brewers along with us as well. So I don't brew all the time. I do some inventory and a bunch of other business side of things, but yeah, so making sure that the beer is doing exactly what it needs to do and relaying that information on is pretty much the necessary of my position. Yeah, one other thing that we do utilize along the eco-friendly aspect is geothermal. So we utilize that aspect for, I believe, our walk-in cooler. And yeah, that's just another way that we kind of give back to the environment. So
yeah, dang. For those who the first 5 minutes of this has been Old Busthead is environmentally friendly. So you both work with each other on a daily basis pretty closely. Is that a fair statement? You guys probably talk to each other probably multiple times throughout the day.
Very close.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And this may seem like an easy question. And Jay will swing it back over to you. What is it about beer that fascinates you? I know most people are like, because it tastes good or something, but I feel as though, especially working in the industry, is there a special fascination you have with beer?
Yeah, I think what really. Oh wait, is it me? Sorry, my bad.
This is funny. We could let's
let's go with Tony.
Let's go with
Well,
Tony. I was gonna
okay.
say, how about this?
Hold on.
Moving forward, also every time I ask a question, we'll switch one.
Yeah.
So, Ant, go ahead.
Yeah. So what? Obviously, Jay's been in it a lot longer than I have, but what really kind of made me focus on beer was just how I think of it as a blank canvas, right? So there is an art to it to an extent. So you can do so much with beer, and there's so many different styles, and I mean, you can get really into it. So many different yeast strains and grain that you can use, hops. You know, the list goes on and on. So I just love that you can come into your work every day and want to build something completely different with
cool.
each batch, and you find that the things that you're good at, you find the beers that your company's gonna like and your demographic likes, but then you can also just completely blow it out of proportion and have fun with it. So it is something that every day you can. There are new trends and there's new ways and new styles of brewing. So it's definitely something that's going to keep on moving on, even though it is there's a lot of craft breweries out there, especially now compared to 20 years ago. But yeah.
It sounded like you said crap breweries, but you said craft, so I'm just gonna make that clarification. Ant's throwing shade out here to other people, but it's craft. And then switching it over to you, Jay.
Yeah, it was almost like a Freudian slip, I think.
Yeah, you got me.
So what fascinates me about just beer in general, not just the brewing industry, is beer is like, it's been around for thousands of years, right? It's actually it's there I think the first recipe was from the hymn to Ninkasi. I'm sure Anthony's heard about this. So basically it's this recipe on a tablet that the Sumerians created. Like, it's basically a prayer giving thanks to the goddess of brewing, and this is like 3,000 years ago.
Damn.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to know that this beer has been made for at least 7,000 years, maybe longer, and it's always been made. Well, at least the first couple millennia, it was being made. It was really consumed because it was safer than water, and so that's still fascinating. Fermentation is fascinating to me. That we take this little fungus, it multiplies rapidly, and then we can reuse it as many times as we want. It's really, really cool, and it always it still excites me when we create a new beer and we brew it, and we extend the generations. It's really, really cool. So
I think that's fascinating that you said that. Like, at one point it was safer to drink beer than it is water. Like, that's crazy. And also I that's a code to live by. Honestly, you could use it. So like, when did you start first getting in, Jay? Like, when did you first start getting into like making beer?
So I was commercial brewing before I was home brewing. And so I started back in 2009 working at a brew pub, and I was working there probably in the front of house, like as a server or busser, bartender, or something like that. And it was a seasonal thing. So my wife and I were living on Martha's Vineyard, and I just really got fascinated with the beer and the brewing and what went into it. And so I begged the brewmaster to let me volunteer. And so that's what I did for like 10 months, without pay. So I just, so that's how I got into it, just volunteer. And so I started off washing kegs and cleaning growlers and stuff like that. So
the nitty gritty, and it's like, same with you. I mean, like, I honestly can't remember the first time you started making beer. I know you've been around alcohol. That sounds weird for me to say, because for those, it did work at a winery before this too. But like, when did you first start getting into like making beer?
Yeah, it's a little different story on that end. Technically, making is when I shadowed Jay at a boardroom in Arlington. So yeah, Jay is the reason why I'm where I am today, just for that purposes. Yeah, it really is.
Full circle.
Yeah, it really, yeah. The beer was not my first, as you know, my first career goal, but I'm glad that I'm in where I am today. But no, yeah. Technically, first making beer was when I was shadowing Jay at boardroom, helping out him with brewing processes and stuff like that. But really, Old Busthead is where I really started. Luckily enough, I was able to take over for someone that was leaving, and then just started groundwork from there. So grunt work, cleaning kegs, helping with packaging, stuff like that. And then basically a year after that is when I really started getting a better understanding of beer, mainly just brewing. Not really know what I'm doing. I'm good with the equipment, but not really like, oh, this is, there's a lot more to this. And then and then it just goes on and on from there. So yeah, probably 4 years ago technically, 4.5 years ago was when I met Jay at Barrel Oak Winery when I was just pouring wine and beer, and he was the head brewer there. So when they first started their brewery, so just getting to meet him long ago and just talking beer with him, and then realizing that, hey, this is something that I want to do, and grateful for him to look out for me. So
And you both kind of mentioned it, and it kind of leads me into my next question. Like, especially like for those who don't know, would you like is that, I guess, what's the official like title for that? But like, what would you say is like the entry level work for getting into brewery? Is it like that cleaning out growlers and kegs and things like that, or like what is the first level of like getting into that? And
I would say that most people, I mean, at least for me, from my perspective, is getting in somewhere where yes, eventually you have other aspirations, but you got to at least show that you're willing to work. And even now, I mean, you're still cleaning kegs, you're still doing stuff, but really in the beginning, you're doing the grunt work stuff. Cleaning kegs, helping with packaging, working in the tap rooms. Every brewery is different, so you might be doing everything all at once, but just really starting on the ground level and working your way up. So it does sound similar to most businesses, but you really do have to put the work in and show that you're willing to make those strides before getting up. So.
And Jay, like, is that like, what was like when you were in Martha's Vineyard, like what was that title called?
That's a good question. Cellar rat, maybe, I don't know, but
I put that on a resume. I was a cellar rat from 2012, like from 2008 to like 2012.
Fortunately for me, I was we were a team of 3 people, so 2 full-time people and then me who was volunteering. And the assistant brewer moved on. I forget when, maybe 2011, and so that's kind of when I filled that role. So assistant brewer, really, packaging assistant or cellar worker or something like that. Entry level, it's kind of dependent on the needs, but usually it's into that cellar packaging assistant role.
I get that, and I'm curious to see how both of you answer this question, and we'll start with you, Jay. From like, I'm talking like the tallest view, like 1,000 feet view up, because I know we only have like this much time. What is it like? Tell us a little bit about like the start to finish process of like making a beer, like mainly maybe the parts people don't necessarily know about, but like, it's not, it's not like, everyone, I think there's probably a misconception around it, and 2, like, I think there is like a true lack of awareness of like how actually like, from the, when you go inside or like when you go to get your beer, like what went into that.
Right. Yeah. There's so much that goes into it, but
I'm sure.
Let's see. 1,000-foot view.
It's a tall order to like be like, hey, take this huge process and make it about this small.
No, that's cool. I like doing this because I like having a conversation with someone, and I understand that we talk turkey every day, and so we know the lingo, and we know what goes into it. But I enjoy explaining this. So basically, brewing is steeping cereal grains in hot water in a process called mashing. And what that does is it breaks down enzymes and turns starches into sugar. And so essentially we just have sugar water. So we take that sugar water, we boil it, we add hops, and then we chill it down and throw yeast in. And a couple weeks later we have beer. The part that people, I think, don't really know about is brewing is like 95% cleaning and sanitizing. And so everything after the boil kettle, which is, when you're boiling, you're not really worried about sanitation. But after the boil kettle, everything after that needs to be not just spotless, but, 99.9% free from microbes, just because no human pathogen can live in beer technically because of the alcohol and the pH. But there are microbes that can spoil the beer, and Anthony and I know full well. There are several that just They just devastate beer. Sometimes they make the beer taste okay, but most of the time it's not really what we want, especially in a brewery like Old Busted where we're distributing and we're trying to be consistent. So so that's what most people I think don't see, is that we're glorified janitors. So, and Anthony's like the number one glorified janitor. No offense to him. That's I say that glowingly and lovingly. Anthony is kind of the man that makes sure that we are contamination free and just holds it down in the cellar. So
he's a pretty clean guy, so I get that. And like, all right, first off, Jay, that was brilliant because that was literally like that. And like, when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Right. I get that. And similar over to you, would you? I guess you don't have to necessarily go into the full process, but would you say like similarly that's how you would describe it to maybe people?
Yeah, I mean, and like it just depends on what you're brewing that day. So yes, you're still making those conversions from starches to sugars and everything like that. Processing that wort, making sure it gets to a boil, everything like that. So yeah, and then and really just the only difference from that point on, that's just as that generality is, then you're just, what yeast are you using, what grain, hops, all that stuff for different styles of beer. But yeah, no, that's basically it. And it does depend on certain beers need a different boil time. It depends on what grain you use, to use an hour boil, 2-hour boil, 90-minute boil. It does vary on that aspect. But yeah, for the most part, yes, to Jay's point, once you're done boiling, it's very important to keep a sanitary condition, because as soon as you kind of have some sort of mental shutdown, brain fart, whatever you want to call it, and there's a hiccup, yeah, you can be in some serious trouble if you don't catch it early. So so it does, definitely being sanitized and basically maintaining a clean environment is very, very key. Especially once you even after it's done fermenting, especially when you're going into bright tanks and right before you're serving and everything like that. Filtering, transferring it from the fermenter to the bright tank, or even if you're going straight from fermenter to keg or anything like that, yeah, you got to make sure that, especially if you're distributing like we are, you never know if you aren't doing that process correctly. You never know when that beer is going to spoil. So
would you say those are like the two harder parts of like your job? I guess like, would you, out of your whole job in your day to day, like, would you say like, because as Jay mentioned, a lot of it's pretty much cleaning. Would you say like part of that cleaning is like one of the more difficult parts?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is, doing it every day. You don't think of it as hard, right? As soon as you have someone that comes into production or whatever, and you're trying to explain it to them, you get a really good idea of what you do. But no, yeah. So like, yes, as Jay said, we are janitors and we're constantly cleaning tanks and everything like that. So I don't consider it hard. I don't want to say that as a being cocky or anything like that. I don't mean it that way at all. But it is I think those day-to-day roles that we're doing, those jobs aren't, I don't consider difficult, but learning those processes, especially if you're getting to the point where brewing and then understanding techniques and then when you go on to and then when you go on the colder side, understanding the importance of keeping a sanitary environment and everything like that can be difficult to grasp at first, because you just don't think of it as you maybe just don't see it as an important factor. But yes, no, it can be. Like I said, I don't know. Hard is the correct word, but
sure.
Yeah, just not taking anything for granted, right? You do this every day, and making sure that you're essentially as perfect as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
So Jay, as like a cellar manager, correct? Like what would you say maybe is one of the harder aspects of like your role in that? And maybe if it isn't cleaning, like what are some of the harder aspects of that job?
I'm sorry, you said cellar manager?
Yeah, wait, that's my role, Joe.
Oh, I messed them up. I am so sorry.
That's quite all right.
I'm gonna have to actually excuse myself because now I sound like an idiot. I I do
We
apologize.
might look alike, but you know.
It's the
Yeah.
beard, man.
Yeah, I gotta trim. Look
So
more
just
like
so we're clear
Anthony.
again, Ant's the cellar manager. What, Jay, your title exactly is?
Brewmaster.
Brewmaster.
See, for some reason was like, okay, wait, that's CMX. So,
As
and
silly as
well,
it
then a
sounds.
good segue to that, like, it sounds like part of being the brewmaster. So, like, that's we can dive into that in a second because, like how that logistics works out. But, so as a brewmaster, then, like, what would be the hardest? I mean, maybe some of the hardest aspects of those, like, day-to-day roles.
Right. So
I feel like an idiot. Also, sorry.
no, it's all good. It's all good. Yeah, I think it's funny because ultimately we're just making beer. It's not like a brain surgery.
Right.
But for my role, I think one of the hardest aspects of my role is like juggling the production logistics, because I'm trying to be as efficient as I can with space and time. But I'm also considering the needs of my the production crew. So I think that everything else is, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, everything else is pretty easy. We work in an awesome industry and we work for awesome people at a really great brewery. So, but yeah, I think that's kind of the most difficult, is just really keeping things efficient and running smoothly and the crew happy. And, but again, it's like, it could be way worse,
Yeah, right. No, 100p. And I'm gonna jump questions here per our like schedule. So would you say like a lot of the aspects of your day to day you think would be applicable to other jobs out there? Like you said, I know, and I'm not, when my day to day, I know what I do is a brain surgery. Like that's, it's technology stuff. But, would you say like, let's say for some reason there's another prohibition starting tomorrow and you guys can't make beer anymore. Is there a lot of what you guys do, you think there that could be, applicable to other roles that other people could say, and then like vice versa, people could take the stuff that they do and bring it into, whether it be a brewmaster and a cellar manager?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, all across the board. I'll tell you what, if there was prohibition, I would continue to make beer, and I'm sure
Hell
Anthony
yeah.
would. But yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, especially in Anthony's role, for instance, I mean, attention to detail, and you have to have mechanical aptitude. You have to have, I mean, like I said, you're a janitor, but you're also the mechanic. You're also, you're the quality. We do all that. We do the sensory. So yeah, I think everything is really applicable to other, I don't know, industries, management,
Sure.
all that stuff. So yeah, totally. And vice versa. I think that we've had some really cool people that have helped us out in production, and they've, the former brewmaster was a mechanical engineer, and it was an easy transition for him. He designed most of like the piping and all that stuff. And we've had some other, I mean, Anthony studied for a long time doing something else, and he came in and was great at what he's doing. And so yeah, I think brewers are pretty resilient, and you have to be like Renaissance men and women. So and I think we would be fine if prohibition happened. But like I said, we would still make it probably.
We'd still make it go for sure.
Right.
And I'm curious to see how like you both would respond to this. And Ann, I'll start with you because I'm curious to see if it's, being that you both work at maybe the same brewery, how this answer might differ. And starting with you, what does it mean to you to make like a quality beer? Like, what does that mean? Like making quality beer?
As far as just me right away, the word I think of is consistency. So like everybody has a different perspective on what they think is good, right? Like you never know, like you have the IPA drinkers, you have the stout drinkers, porters. I mean, everybody has a different style that they like, but as long as you're consistent and you're keeping, as Jay mentioned, those sensory skills in check, and every batch is as close as possible to the next one, that's quality. Like our core beers are our core beers for a reason. So you can come in and have our Vixen, our Irish Red, or you can come in and our caramel macchiato and all of our caramel macchiato variants. You can still pick out those beers, and even though they're flavored a little different, and speaking for caramel macchiato, you can still tell, you can still be able to taste that base caramel macchiato versus all the other flavors. So in my opinion, quality beer is just consistency. And it's hard to get, it's hard to be consistent. You know, you gotta, there is a lot of trial and error. And as much as you maybe want to brew all these different styles and because there are so many, but no, yeah, I think just being consistent and finding your own niche, for sure. Yeah, that's my opinion of quality. Yeah.
Sure. Moving it over to you, Jay.
Yeah. So, I mean, likewise, I think that consistency is important and definitely the answer. But otherwise, you know, I kind of what I look for in beer. I can always find a beer that I like at any brewery. You know, it's just ultimately what I do is I look for, you know, I taste a beer and I say, okay, does this have an off flavor? And Anthony knows, Anthony and I, we do this weekly. We look for off flavors. We train our palates on certain off flavors. And so that's kind of a sure sign to say this is a quality beer. And really is it free from contamination? And I'd say that's quality. Again, the consistency is cannot be understated or overstated or whatever that phrase is. It's too many goals. But I think that this is kind of why you have to really respect those bigger breweries, because their consistency game is far, you know, it's way beyond what we're doing. It's every beer that you try from any of those, pick a Coors Banquet, it's always going to taste the same.
I was about to say it's always the same. It's the first Bud Light you pick up is the same as the 15th Bud Light you have.
Exactly.
And so, well, yeah, right, exactly. You got to have 15 of those, right? Because it's like water. So I get, and this is a part I'm really excited for. And Jay, we'll start with you on this because I'm curious also to see what Ann says. So, like you said, and I think it's very applicable. You can go into most breweries and, you know, find a beer you like. Give me your top 3 favorite beer types and maybe a little reasoning why, you know, you like those top 3. And then Ant, we'll shift it over to you.
Okay. Let's see. I'll try to be quick.
No, take your time.
Okay. So my top 3, I love, well, let's just stick with styles. I love Kolsch.
Okay. Yep.
I think Kolsch is excellent. It's one of those beers that, you know, like it's kind of a rebellious style. These brewers in Cologne have been brewing it for so long, and they refuse to kind of bow down to the lager brewers. And you know, the whole country of Germany was trying to get them to stop making what they're doing and start making lagers with them, you know. So anyway, but not just the flavor. I love the history, and I love the beer itself. Flemish red ales, another one of my top 3. I love Flemish red beers. They're pretty sour. They're tart. There's a little hint of vinegar. It's not overly tart. It's just when I first had it, it was probably in 2011 maybe. And as a young brewer, never trying something like that before, it kind of just blew my mind. And they're just so delicious. And then I think number 3 would just be IPAs in general. I love IPA. And you can't go wrong. And there's so many, and I'm not just saying West Coast IPAs or New England style. I'm saying all IPAs. I love the fact that IPAs are kind of like the canvas that brewers are using to, you know, innovate basically. You know, with new hops, there's new yeast strains for IPAs. So yeah, those are my top 3, I think. Eager to hear
real quick before we jump to you. Yeah, real quick. Do you have any like honorable mentions or like ones that you were like, there maybe like I'll have it, but like it's not like my first choice?
Well, this is really difficult for me because I'm no joke. I love all beer. I have no like.
I get that. You
know what I mean? So just honorable mention, yeah, hell yeah, a brown ale. And it's not a super sexy style, but man, when you have a really classic chocolatey, nutty brown ale, it's super smooth and light. It's a mind-blowing, delicious beer. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Not
all right.
Sexy.
No, hey, sometimes you don't need that. You know, sometimes you don't need the flash. All right, Ant, let me hear you.
No, just based off of that brown ale note, one of the first beers that I tried was when Jay gave me a Samuel Smith, nut brown ale. I mean, that's an old, very, very, very old.
I remember that.
I bought. Yeah, we went down to Carmine's. I brought a 6-pack. Yeah, no, that it's just a very, then you just learn about the tradition and Samuel Smith just alone as far as how long they've been brewing. But no, top three. This is hard just in the sense of I'm still learning and I haven't been in the industry for very long. But right now, yeah. One of the first beers I ever had. Yeah, one of the first beers I ever had was a Belgian triple. Those the Belgian beers I've grown to really appreciate them from just all their esters and everything that you can produce from a Belgian beer, especially the yeast is amazing. From that point on, I'll have to go Wits. And if you told me that I would say Wits, I don't think I would believe you 5 years ago. But same thing. Allagash White is one of my favorite beers, and that can be categorized, like a wheat beer too. But no, I just love those flavors that you can get from a wit, especially those coriander and orange kind of peel flavors to it. The spicier the better, in my opinion. So, and then last but not least, if you want to round it out, I don't know, I'm split between IPAs because IPAs were one of the first ones that I ever drank, and that's kind of how I got into brewing. At that time there was any sort, even now you can still get IPAs wherever, but yeah, that, or I've really been getting into the sour craze, which is kind of still going around, but especially brewing sours and be able to see the amazing characteristics that you get from kettle sour is really cool to understand what goes into that bacteria and everything like that. Especially what we do at Old Busted, but yeah, I guess those three. It's hard though. It's hard because it's just if you I don't really have
I could see
an alternate or anything like that. It's just everywhere, to what Jay said earlier, everywhere I go, I try to get a different style that I haven't had in a while, I never had before. Every time I see an alt beer, I'll try to try one of those, or I've grown an appreciation for cask beers. I know Jay did one at Barrel Oak a long time ago, and you don't really see them much anymore. I know they're more of a obviously England style for sure. But yeah,
it's a solid top three.
Cask beers are really cool, and yeah, I don't know.
I was gonna say, we
can keep on going on and on, but yeah.
And it sounds like you're almost doing yourself a disservice if you only stick to maybe I'm only going to drink IPAs, or I'm only going to drink wheat beers or something. You should want to venture out into those other types of beers, because one, you don't know what you're missing, and two, there's just so much history with them that and like you guys keep saying, it's every beer is a canvas and each individual brewery might be doing something different. So you want to try. On the flip side of that, what are your least favorite types of beers or ciders or seltzers? Because I feel like it's just as important maybe to learn those as it is the others. So maybe do a tit for tat, and Jay, we'll flip it back over to you real quick.
Oh man, this is a hard one. I think if we're gonna throw in ciders and seltzers, I love ciders. But I'd probably pick a seltzer. But then again, Anthony and I and the crew at Old Busted, we made this cucumber mint mojitos seltzer, which was actually pretty damn good. Honestly, I think I was thinking about this. Amber ales. I remember that's probably the first beer that I ever made was an amber ale at an offshore ale company in Massachusetts, and I just remember thinking it's kind of a shit, either drink an IPA or drink a brown ale. It's it's kind of I don't know. It's not an Irish red. It doesn't have that same roastiness as an Irish red. It's kind of middle of the road. So I guess it has a place, but it's not really it's probably the bottom of the list. But again, I don't hate it. If I was only served an amber ale, I'm sure it'd be good. But yeah, that's probably my least favorite.
All right, Ant, flipping it to you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pick one.
Yeah, no, yeah. Ciders and seltzers, I'm fine with drinking them. There's a time and place for them for sure. I'll have a bunch of beers and then you have a seltzer and you're like, oh, I can keep on going for a little while because it's a little bit lighter and stuff like that. But I don't know. Like in the beginning, I was not a big fan of super like heavy bourbon barrel beers or anything like that. And it wasn't. I mean, I like them a little bit better now, but maybe it's just wherever I had them. You can get a little too boozy with them, and you gotta like kind of work that fine line. I mean, we just came out with a really good rum barrel aged Irish extra stout, but it's just and I wouldn't, and that's why it's tough because I don't know if it's my least favorite. I definitely will always try something that's in a barrel. Yeah, I'll always try something that's in a barrel because that's a whole different type of, not a whole different type, but that's another aspect of brewing that's really cool. Breweries that have really good barrel barrel work aspects.
So your least favorite is a barrel cask kind of beer.
Yes.
Make a decision.
I'm making it. Yeah.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Just because it can. I mean, sometimes you can. I've just had more bad beers in the sense of like just being too boozy and not getting those characteristics that they advertise as. And that's a tough thing too, is when a brewery has this big description of that beer and you're not getting those flavors. That can kind of be disappointing in a sense. So
I got you. Okay. Yeah. And so before we jump into the fun questions and some other things outside of beer, I have a couple more just real quick. One being, maybe what are some common like misunderstandings maybe people have about beer making? Like I think a lot of people when they think of beer making, they think of their buddy's dad or someone in the bathtub trying to, get something going, which is just furthest from the truth. Because I think if there's one thing people learned from this episode is there is a true art and a lot of science and integral things that go into making beer. And like you guys said, I think the consistency of that, there's so much that goes into being consistent. So maybe what are some maybe misunderstandings either that you've heard or you think are out there about beer making as a whole? And we'll start with Anthony this time.
This was a tough one because like I'm more of the newer side of brewing. I know it's been around for ages and the experience side of it. I think more people nowadays have a better understanding of beer and the craft beer industry. I don't, the only ones that I've really seen have been stouts or darker beers tend to be like heavier or higher in alcohol, and that's not the case in my opinion. I mean, our most popular stout, Caramel Macchiato, is not high in alcohol, and it's not that heavy at all. So I think that's one of them for sure that I've seen. Also, that beer has to be you have to drink it cold, everything like that. Now there's certain styles, and I brought up cask beers. They can be served at room temperature at least, excuse me. But yeah, so I guess those are the two that I've, kind of noticed. Maybe
don't our friends over the pond in England drink beers at like room temp? Isn't that like a thing? Yeah.
Yes.
Man.
Yeah.
Exactly. So okay. Oh wait, hang on. Jay was about to jump in on that. Go ahead.
Yeah.
But correct me if you need to.
Well, it's really like it's supposed to be served at cellar temperature, which is 55 or so. So I think that's a misconception.
See, I was about to say right now we just made one. We literally just made one. Perfect.
Right. And I even said room temperature. So yes, as a correction. Yes.
There you go. Misconceptions happening right here. Jay, anything outside of obviously that one?
Well, I think that one thing that I kind of misunderstood as well was the fact that light beer, specifically like light lagers, are easy to make, and actually those are the most difficult to make. Those lightest lagers are the most difficult in brewing to make, and it's simply put, it's because it's very difficult to hide any off flavors or aromas. You can kind of get away with certain things in an IPA where you can't do in a German Pilsner, for instance, because it's blank. It's very light. It's you're supposed to get this bready Pilsner malt with a little tiny bit of hop character. yeah, so if you have any imperfection, it's going to show. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I think that's a pretty big misconception, and I was a victim of that as well when I was, getting into brewing.
Okay. And
Yep.
last, I guess, direct beer related question before I jump into stuff outside of beer. Well, still kind of related, but more fun kind of questions. What do you see yourself doing either in this industry? I'm probably in this industry if you don't plan on leaving. What is something maybe you see yourself doing or wanting to do in 5 years? Did you want to be, in the same role you're at, either, at a specific brewery, or, a lot of people, some people are in a role that they have like brewmaster, where potentially maybe that's where they want to be. Maybe that's the top they want to be. Or is there another, maybe 5 years down the road somewhere in the industry that you want to be at potentially? Jade, you first. Jade first. Told you, got you on your toes there.
Yeah. So I guess where I want to be in 5 years is drinking a beer on the beach in front of my beachfront, brewery.
I like that.
Yeah, that's where I want to be in 5 years. And but
That's
ultimately I want to be happy. So I think, that might change. But yeah, ultimately I think opening a brewery somewhere like
cool.
on a beach somewhere, that would be pretty sweet,
That's pretty solid. I'll come drink beer at that
Well,
brewery for sure.
my parents are from Portugal, so my goal, I have this half goal that in the next 5 to 10 years I'd like to open a brewery in Portugal. But we'll
Yeah,
see.
that'd be awesome. Portugal. I've always wanted to visit Portugal. That's one of my like top 5 top places like I want to go visit. Like I would love to go there. And flipping it over to you, same question.
Yeah. I mean, what Jay said isn't too bad,
I think anyone would agree.
Yeah, right. As long as you're drinking a beer and you're having a good time doing it, what can go wrong? But yeah, I've always, like, obviously sports have been in our family for a while, and especially baseball. So I've always wanted to have a brewery and a baseball stadium. Obviously
Cool.
the Yankees would be cream of the crop, but I wouldn't want to be having a brewery in New York during the wintertime or anything like that. So but yeah, definitely that was probably my number one goal.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. So
That's pretty cool.
But also being on the beach couldn't be too bad. So
no, I mean, if
yeah.
you did do that in New York, in the off season, you could just go to the the beach.
I don't have to be there. I can just have to make sure
Once you
everything
get
runs
the things
well.
running, you hire cellar managers and brewmasters, and then you have that going. You do that. But next question, and this is kind of outside of beer making, and Jay, we'll start with you. Outside of beer making, what are some of your interests and hobbies? Is there I'm sure, like, obviously a lot of the hobbies and things we do outside of our jobs include beer, but what are, some things, that are interest to you or hobbies that you like doing?
Yeah, I've got too many to list. I've got like so many things there's so many things that I want to do and I start doing and then I do something else. But
yeah,
really, like, I'm a huge sports fan, so I follow soccer and football mostly. I usually watch baseball in October, and that's about it.
makes sense.
Yeah. Otherwise, I like to paint. I like to draw, stuff like that.
Cool.
I don't have a ton of time for it, but yeah, that's kind of it. I live for weekend sports, and yeah.
Who are your teams, real quick? Just gotta ask. As far as football and baseball, I mean, let's start with football and we'll go to baseball.
Well, I'm from Massachusetts, so if I was,
so he's a Patriots fan.
It's the greatest team on earth. Yes, the Patriots.
You should have done that too. And don't say you're like a Red Sox fan too. Then
no, I'm a Red Sox fan in October, and
when they make it, when they happen to be there.
Right. And then for soccer, I grew up watching this Portuguese team. I don't really follow them as much, but I end up watching when I was working in Massachusetts. The person that I learned how to brew from, he was from England, and he was a big Liverpool fan, and so he got me into Liverpool. So that's kind of been my team for the last 15 years.
That's cool. Hey, that's tight. That's tight. And real quick for the fans, because I know besides doing this, times? What are some of? I know we're a big baseball family. Are there any hobbies or interests I don't know about that you'd like to share?
Well, real quick, Joe's a Falcons fan, so
Yeah, we didn't have to bring that up.
yeah,
So Aunt's birthday, fun little side tangent story.
Yeah.
My brother's birthday is March 28th,
Yeah.
3/28.
Oh,
And
man.
I always tell myself, like, okay, I gotta send a text, but every year my buddy Kai will send me a text on March 28th that's like happy 3/28 day, and I literally can't take it anymore. Like, you go into that whole story. I take full responsibility that we're the reason we lost that Super Bowl, but that's time for another story. And
Yeah.
go back to that.
Sorry to put you in that situation, Joe.
My team
But
will forever be known for the biggest Super Bowl.
yeah,
It's fine.
I can't speak for anything that you don't know. I mean, but no, besides sports, I love snowboarding. Oh geez,
A
what
lot of
else?
fun.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, when we have a chance to go, for sure. Definitely snowboarding. I don't know. I mean, I take advantage of the days where we're not doing stuff. I like relaxing.
Yeah.
For sure.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, like going out to wineries and breweries and stuff like that. But especially like Marissa loves doing that as well. So it's nice having someone that you can go out with as well. But just really
That's
relaxing.
a good segue point, actually, because I have a question for both of you, and Jay, we'll flip it to you. Do you find that, like, when you're having free time with family or your wife, or when you're with people, that when you're having a beer, like, do you tend to like analyze it more, or do you think like maybe you're able to, like, I mean, you probably know what you're looking for, but do you ever find like you're just like, I know what I like, I'm gonna take this, sip on it, or do you find yourself, some people like, or if you're really, especially like since you guys are really into your craft, do you, when you get a new beer or when you're out just with family and friends and you have a beer, do you take the time to, flaunt your stuff a little bit?
Let's see. Well, I try not to be that guy that spends too much time, most of my time sniffing the beer instead of drinking it. So, I don't like to be the center of attention, so I try to not talk about beer when I'm out with friends and drinking beer. But yeah, ultimately, I mean, it's kind of inevitable. I'm sure Anthony's going to say the same thing. It's inevitable that when you order a beer, you smell it, you look at it, and you do some sensory on it. And so I always do it. I always analyze it. I just try not to make it a big thing. And right.
How can you not? I mean, I did the same thing with, like, if I did technology stuff, I'm always curious about things. Like, right. I get that. And similar to you, do you just, internally, do you analyze it? Or you just like, all right, like, it's in there, and if anybody asks, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, of course. The first beer I have, I pour into a glass, swirl it around, and look at shade, toss it to the light to see if it is. Yeah, no, I don't do any of that. I mean, I will always. No, no. I will. Nothing beats going to get a 30 rack of Bud Light and just having a good time with your friends. Like you appreciate having those beers for sure. But no, I to Jay's point, yeah, being in industry and stuff, you do those little nuances and not make a thing out of it. But no, I certainly do not.
True.
Yeah. It's hard not to, but yes. Yeah, it's hard not to, but it's not like I'm showing off.
Jay was saying before about light beer, when you're like shotgunning and doing something, you're like, man, it must have been hard for these guys to do that. Go back. You're like, this was really hard to do. And then just based off of the flow, the last couple of questions, and I'll lead with this because I don't think I've ever asked you this question. Are there any like topics, interests, charities, things that you find really close to you? The main, as you guys probably learned from this, the main point of why I do this show and what I'd like to do is this: I love learning about people and what they do, different backgrounds, what you do, what I do, what someone else does. It could be completely different, but it's still a good opportunity just to learn from people, and you find out things you may want to try yourself. So are there any like topics or interests, or like I said, charities and things like that like you're really close to, or like things that you either wish people knew about, or like you wanted something like to give a shout out to? And starting with you.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, started with you because of the way the next question goes. I want to ask Jay first.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Topics, interests, charities. No, I mean, like, obviously, staying in the industry. Yeah, no, you can always learn about beer and coming in with
Doesn't
open
have to
mind
be
to a
it.
brewery. I know, no, yeah, I'm just saying, yeah, just as that aspect. No, yeah, as far as like charities or fundraisers, Joe, I mean, and Jay, you saw too. Very close to me is Creutzfeldt Jacobs disease. My best friend Daniel passed away at a very early age of it. So yeah, it's been 3 years now. So he was one of the youngest to ever pass away from it. It's a very rare prion disease, neurodegenerative disease, like 1 in every million people, can be diagnosed by it. So there is still no cure. So always trying to raise awareness for that. It's definitely tough for anyone that's in that position. But yeah, as far as any other charities or anything, I know Old Busted, Ike and Julie, their daughter Finley's March. They do a 5K every year that they just did last weekend.
Cool.
And she was a big environmental friendly, like a lot of the initiatives they do is in honor of her. So yeah,
That's
definitely shedding light to that too. But yeah, no, it's just like, just always, my biggest thing is you never know who you're going to meet, and always putting yourself in their footsteps. How would they be treated in that situation? So yeah, yeah. So always coming with an open mind and getting to know someone before judging them, all that fun stuff. But yeah, so yeah.
Flipping it over to you, Jay. Anything that you want to raise awareness to, or things that are important to you, wish people knew more about, things like that?
Yeah, there are a bunch, but I'll keep it short and sweet.
Share as much as you want, man.
Well, that's the thing. I try not to share much about. So basically, one thing that I'm kind of I try to bring awareness to, but I'm also, like I said, I don't try to put myself at the center of attention. But this mental illness is pretty prevalent in my family, so I try and my brother's got schizophrenia, which is a pretty serious this in itself, and so but mental illness period. So I try to like even my management style, I try to be empathetic and always be readily available. I don't really talk about it much, but I want to help. Other things, like more lighthearted things, or I'm an animal lover. I don't have any kids, but I have a really cool dog who's cooler than most. And my wife and I always we donate every month to the Humane Society.
Awesome.
Yeah, but otherwise, I definitely wanted to bring up Finley's Green Leap Forward, which Anthony already did.
Yeah.
Really, really cool, charity that was named in honor of Ike and Julie, the owner of Old Busted's daughter, who passed away. So, those are really, like I said, I try to do things in the background,
Yeah. It's always good to keep yourself like busy with that kind of stuff, and always just, I think to what everyone's kind of saying is, always kind of, make sure you those kind of things are just as important as the things you do in your day to day. And those are, I think, important things for people to know about, and, just to have more background on and understanding for. And now a complete flip side, and a question I and love looking forward to. In fact, I ran into a buddy this past weekend who equated it to, without getting into it, we used to ask people, the question, how much could you bench, or how much could you lift? Like, how strong are you? This is just a different variation of that question. So similar to the movie Step Brothers, where Dale and Brennan, if you're not familiar with the film, I'm sure Jay, you may be, but first have you seen the movie Step Brothers?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So when Dale and Brennan are walking to when they're walking over to the playground, and they come across the school, Chris Kardaki, and they're going to fight, and they just, they get the shit kicked. Similar to that situation, how many fifth graders do you think you could fight or take down before they overpower you?
I think at least one.
That's a fair answer. I gotta respect that. I was curious to see which way you're gonna go, because I thought you were like, it's a tough. Fifth graders are built different now. They're getting recruited by guys like Saban. You don't know what you're coming up with. They're built different.
Guys like Saban.
And I have to. Go ahead.
But they're also on their phones so much, so I don't think they would see it coming. So I would just blindside. I would take out as many as I could. You know what I mean?
I think that's a great topic that you bring that up, because a lot of different people bring up variables to different things, and I think that's a variable no one's talked about yet. Is kids that are just glued to their phones. So naturally, when you get to that playground, they're going to probably be looking down at it. So you've already got a step ahead of them. And I want to make a point. When I was sharing, whenever I shared these episodes and I do these things, I actually had some friends from across the pond that I don't know via Reddit. That when I asked this question, they got confused because the way they do schooling over there, it's like 5th year, 6th year, 7th year kind of thing. So for friends across the pond listening, same kind of question, but I believe the conversion rate is a 5th grader here is like a 6th year, 7th year there. So for those listening across the pond, same kind of question, just flip out 5th grader for 6th year. And has your answer changed at all since I've asked you this last time?
Probably not. I'm still sticking to that 10 to 15 range.
Gosh,
but Jay
this kid thinks
Jay brings up now that you bring up the point with the phones, I'm gonna really stick with it. But that was a good one because I don't think that we've heard anyone that has said the phone aspect.
The phone is
and
key.
I mean,
I
don't know.
In that,
what were we saying, Jay?
I didn't have a cell phone.
Yeah.
You?
No, I mean, well, and that's why we're probably built different. I think it's just one of those things where, like, it, like, you could like quickly be like, hey, look at that TikTok real quick, and they look down, and then you swift kick to the face, and it's like, haha, I got him now. That's that. I think you bring up a good point that 5th graders are just glued to their phones, which I get because everything's technology based nowadays. But I get that. I appreciate you answering that question. That's a question I asked.
I think I would say, though, is I would be – the reason why I'm sticking with 10-15 is because I would utilize the playground as well. So I would I think I could knock down a couple kids on a swing set or, something like that. Or
with a good kick?
I don't know. Yeah,
I get that. But no, my buddy this past weekend, we were at a Halloween party. And he had mentioned to me he was listening to the show and he really likes the question. And he was like, you used to ask people, how much you lift, how much can you bench? Well, now you just go up to your friend. It's like, well, how many 5th graders do you think you could fight? It's just like a different way of gauging someone's strength. Also, I'd be curious to see if down the road people use this in interviews and stuff. But again, thank you so much for participating in that question. I love asking it to everyone and anyone. So that's very fun to, now we have the perspective of a few brewmaster and cellar manager of what they think they can do. Before I let you both go, you guys have been great guests. Thank you so much for sharing everything about the beer industry and, the ins and outs of that career. I think a lot of people will gain a lot from this and really want to know what goes into it more and more. I think you might have gained a few more, occupants in the industry. Before I let anyone go, Jay, starting with you, do you have anything else you wanted to share, or is there anything else before I let you go that, you were interested in, or just last comments about beer? Anything you wanted to share?
Beer is good, man. Beer is good. Keep drinking it. No,
beer is good.
Joe, thank you so much for having us. I'm happy to have beer with you in person at some point.
We definitely need to make that happen for sure. We will. We'll get that going. And before I let you go, and anything else, do you have anything?
No, same old. Thank you once again for being on, and we'll definitely have a beer for sure. Well, obviously we'll have a beer for sure, but the three of us will definitely make it happen. And we'll talk about other things besides beer, and we'll shoot the shit and
let's shoot the shit about beer and 5th graders easily.
Beer and 5th graders,
but I can't thank you both enough for coming on. It was a lot of fun. I think, Jay, that might be the tagline of it all. It's beer's good. And with that, we'll head out to the outro of the show. But thank you guys very much.
Appreciate it.
Fellas.
Cheers.